You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today, I am looking at players who might be options for you to drop in your fantasy basketball league. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Now, with the vast majority of these aren't players that you just automatically drop if there's no one else to add, but they're guys, and again, it's not an exhaustive list. There might be other names that you want to throw in here, and if you do have any other names who you think might be drop candidates, drop them in the comments down below or tweet at me on Twitter at redrock_bball. These are just guys, 9 guys that I've got here who can be drops, who I think are rostered in too many leagues, who might be being held on to under the wrong circumstances. So let's have a look at these players. And the first one we talk about is Joe Ingles of the Utah Jazz. The Jazz playing funny buggers with their starting lineup today. The announcement came out that Mike Conley was headed to the bench for Royce O'Neal, and then about an hour later reverse tracked and said, no, actually Conley's staying in the starting lineup and Ingles is moving to the bench. Now, it's been a disaster for Ingles pretty much all season as long as Conley has been there. He started off the year on the bench and struggled. Conley got hurt. He started. He looked great again. Conley came back and they started together and Ingles fell off and now he moves back to the bench. So it's really hard to hold on to Joe at this point. He is over the course of the season, the 126th ranked player. I think that's going to go down. He's 225th in the last 5 games as well. Really hard to justify holding him in 12-team leagues. Of course, this wouldn't be a players to drop podcast unless I was talking about the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma. Drop him. Don't look back. He played like 12 minutes in the first game with Markieff Morris. There is so many people still holding on to him. 63% rostered in Yahoo, and he is the 248th ranked player. People have a lot of faith. They believe in blonde hair dye, or they don't know what they're doing. Maybe it's a combination of all 3 of those things, but Kuzma has absolutely no business in a 12-team league. Absolutely zero business at all. Let's talk Kendrick Nunn, who has put up some good numbers lately, no doubt about that, with Jimmy Butler out over the last 2 weeks of action, over 5 games. He's just snuck inside the top 100, but Butler is returning today, and we see that with this Heat team, with Crowder and Iguodala there, and then when Hero comes back, he just won't play 30 minutes a night most nights, and I think he's over-rostered, 89% advanced roster percentage over on Basketball Monster for a guy that offers you subpar scoring, and the minutes are going to drop. I don't look in, and again, it's not an automatic drop, it's no Kyle Kuzma, but it is a situation where if he is on your roster and you added him for this scenario when Butler was out, well, Butler's back, and it's hard for me to see Nunn maintaining top 100 value. And if you can't maintain consistent top 100 or top 110 type value, then your name is on the chopping block to me, and that spot is generally going to be better used for streamers, for grabbing a guy like a Gorgie Jeng who sees their value increase temporarily. This one, again, shouldn't need too many explanations. Reggie Jackson for the Clippers. I'll also throw in Marcus Morris there for the Clippers as well. They both go from high usage starting roles in Detroit and in New York to lower usage bench role for Reggie Jackson and a starting role for Marcus Morris. But these are not guys, and there'll be nights occasionally where maybe they can push to close to top 150 value, but in the whole of how they produce, it's just not worth holding on to them in any 12-team leagues, and probably 14-team league point at this point for Reggie Jackson, especially considering how low his minutes are going to be, and probably for Marcus Morris as well. Not a smell. So both of those guys, I think, are pretty clear drops in 12-team formats and 14-team league formats, being on the Clippers. We don't know what that's going to do to Patrick Beverley. He might become a drop there as well. But at this point, I'd rather hold him over Jackson and over Marcus Morris. JJ Redick, I was stunned to see how many people roster JJ Redick still. 87% in advanced leagues. He is, over the course of this season, the 134th ranked player. I don't see him maintaining that, and that's like the 12th best player on a 13-man roster. That's where that sits, which is not that great. And so much of the season early on, there was no Ingram at points, there was no Zion, there was no Drew, there was no Lonzo. All these players were out, and that's when Redick really banked in those numbers and still couldn't crack the top 120. Now we see Josh Hart elevating his game, Zion and Drew and Ingram and Lonzo all playing ahead of him, and he's barely lucky to get 25 minutes a night. He's a 3-point streamer at best. He offers nothing in other categories, and he should not be held in 10-team leagues or in 12-team leagues, and in 14-team leagues. It's debatable to me, but there are a lot of those 3-point specialists you can add off the waiver wire. Like someone even like Gary Harris might be an option, although he's not hitting anywhere near as many threes as what Redick is. But yeah, for example, someone like Darius Garland, I would have him over Redick every day of the week, but the roster percentages do not add up to that, and they do not go that way. Even someone like Eric Gordon's probably going to provide you more value in that 3-point category than what JJ Redick is. I'll put Marvin Bagley on this list as well. I could probably put Rashawn Holmes there. I'm getting more and more skeptical that he's going to return this season, but I'm pretty confident that Bagley, even if he does return, he's not going to be worth a 12-team league roster spot, and I bring him up again because he's just rostered in too many leagues at this point. Over 60% is too high for a guy that even when he's played this season hasn't even been a top 150 player. He struggles to hit threes, get assists, get steals, get blocks. His field goal percentage is not good. At least he's improved his free throws to a degree this season, but he just, with multiple foot injuries and not that good of a player, and you're falling behind other guys in the rotation, it's not great if you are a Marvin Bagley supporter or if you have him in fantasy, and he is not someone that I think we should be caring to continue to roster in 12s. Most of you, I guess, would have already dropped him, but he is a pretty clear drop, in my opinion. I talked about Marcus Morris already. Let's go to Malik Monk because we had some breaking news today, and Monk is suspended indefinitely, and it looks to be a violation of the marijuana drug suspension policy. There is no time frame for that. I don't think it's a 25-gamer like John Collins or DeAndre Ayton. He is going to miss some time here, though, and he was a fringe-ish guy anyway, Monk. In the last game where he started in place of Devontae Graham was absolutely shitful. We know that, but he is the 91st ranked player over the last 2 weeks, even including those last 2 poor performances. But with this suspension likely to cut 5 to 10 games off his production, it's hard to hold on to a guy who's barely a top 100 player. And again, with an open-ended suspension, we're not auto-dropping him, but again, if you're in that scenario where you just need to add someone, you need to get someone else into your roster, you need those games, you're in the playoffs, you can't afford to hold a guy with such little upside for the rest of the season when we just don't know when he's even going to return. So obviously horrible news there for him, for the Hornets. So many off-the-court issues plagued his first 2 seasons in the NBA, and he looked like he was getting his shit together. Apparently not. I, again, don't know the details of the suspension or why he was suspended, or even if it's a fair suspension or anything like that. We just know that at this point he is suspended, so therefore he can't contribute to your fantasy team, and therefore he is a drop. The last guy I want to talk about here is Carmelo Anthony of the Portland Trailblazers. Started out pretty strong, Melo, but recently has fallen off quite considerably. And look, again, this is not an auto drop, but he's a guy that is, over the course of the season, the 128th ranked player, which again, you look at 10-teamers, he's a drop there pretty clearly, but in 12-team leagues, he's like, all right, well, he's my 11th best guy, my 12th best guy maybe. If I've got a strong team, he's my 12th best player. He's maybe my 13th best player. Things aren't going in a great direction, and when Damian Lillard returns, this little marginal spike he's had recently may fall off. The 3-point shooting, the steal rate, the assist rate, the rebound stuff, which was all career high-ish type levels earlier in the season, has regressed back to where he's been over the last couple of stops in Houston and Oklahoma City. The points aren't coming in big enough volume. The efficiency's hurting you. I see him as a guy, man, I just need 15 points. Hey, let's stream in Melo and see what happens. But otherwise, as a must-hold guy, I'd rather guys who are available. Melo's rostered in 91% of advanced leagues, and guys who are rostered in fewer leagues than that I'd rather have. Naz Reid for the short term, Josh the Hitman Hart, Bogdan Bogdanovic. You look at Cam Reddish maybe, Seth Curry, Paul Washington Jr., Jordan Clarkson, Smokin' Joe Harris. Actually, he's rostered in more leagues. Terrence Ross, Kobe White, who's pushing way up. I'd much rather have those guys than Carmelo Anthony. Another name to just quickly talk about is Al Horford. He is looking a little bit like a drop at the moment. The Ben Simmons injury has helped him out, but he is someone at least we can consider as a drop. I probably would hold in 12s. In a 10-team league, though, I think Horford can go. All right, that'll do it for me today, guys. Subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Give a comment down below. Give it a thumbs up, 5-star ratings and reviews, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.